Find a comfortable spot, and let's leave the day behind. We're heading into a hidden corner of the Jujutsu Kaisen world tonight, but this story isn't about a sorcerer. It's about the birth of an unlikely new ally. Picture a gentle spirit born from all the lonely and forgotten things, living a quiet life in the echoing halls of an abandoned department store. You are a collector of memories, a guardian of the lost. But your peace is about to be shattered when 3 young Jujutsu sorcerers break in, mistaking your gentle nature for a dangerous curse. If you enjoy drifting off into these adventures, feel free to subscribe so we can explore them again. For now though, just close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and let the story of the curses begin. Your world is a quiet kingdom of forgotten things, a sprawling, multi-level territory carved from the decaying carcass of a once great department store. You are a cursed spirit born not from fear or hate, but from the gentle melancholy sigh of things being lost. Your existence is a peaceful one, dedicated to the solemn duty of gathering, making you a hoarder, a curator, and an archivist of the misplaced. Your form is a soft, vaguely humanoid shape, made of swirling dust bunnies and mismatched, glowing socks. Your eyes are 2 large sad buttons, and your purpose is simply to remember what the human world so carelessly forgets. Today you are cataloguing a new acquisition in the abandoned food court on the 3rd floor. It is a single child-sized mitten still radiating a faint, tearful echo of the small hand that lost it. You are about to place it in its proper section. Winter wear, youth, left hand only. When the peace of your domain is not just broken, but utterly and completely annihilated. A sound like a thunderclap rips through the cavernous space. The reinforced glass of the food court skylight explodes inward, showering the floor with a hailstorm of glittering shards. 3 figures drop from the opening above, landing in perfect 3-point stances amidst the debris. They radiate a cursed energy so sharp, so focused, and so aggressively hostile that it feels like a physical blow. They are young, clad in dark, severe uniforms, and they move with the predatory grace of trained killers. They are Jujutsu Sorcerers. "There it is!" yells the girl with fiery orange hair, pointing a hammer at you with the accusatory fury of a prosecuting attorney. "Big, fluffy, and smells like my grandma's basement. That's our target." Before you can even process the insult, the attack begins. The boy with the pink hair is a blur of motion, a living missile of superhuman strength. He closes the 50-foot distance between you in the blink of an eye, his fist glowing with a terrifying pale blue cursed energy. "Here I come!" he roars, his voice full of a strange, cheerful battle lust. You react on pure terrified instinct. You are a creature of peace with no claws, no fangs, and no desire to harm. Your only defense is your very nature. As the boy's fist is about to connect with your soft lint-based form, you reach out with your innate technique. This attack is powerful enough to shatter concrete. You don't target him. You target his attack. You make his powerful punch lost. The cursed energy around his fist vanishes. The forward momentum of his body continues, but the force of the blow is gone, misplaced into a forgotten corner of reality. Yuji Itadori expects to connect with a cataclysmic impact, but instead delivers a clumsy, powerless punch. It connects with your fluffy torso with a soft, unsatisfying poof. He stumbles forward, completely off balance, a look of utter bewilderment on his face. "What the?" he sputters, trying to regain his footing. He doesn't get the chance. The dark-haired boy, Megumi, is already moving, his hands a blur of shadow puppetry. "Don't let up!" "It's got a weird technique," he commands. A massive, monstrous black dog, a divine dog, erupts from his shadow, its ethereal jaws snapping as it lunges for you. You don't want to hurt the dog. It's a good dog, just a bit aggressive. You reach into your vast conceptual hoard of misplaced items and pull out the perfect distraction, a bright red, squeaky, and very lost rubber chicken. You manifest it in the air directly in front of the divine dog's snarling maw. The powerful Shikigami, in the middle of a lethal charge, skids to a halt. Its predatory instincts are instantly and completely overridden by the sudden baffling appearance of the squeaky toy. It tilts its head, lets out a confused wuff, then tentatively nudges the chicken with its nose. It squeaks. The dog is captivated. "What are you doing?" Megumi yells at his Shikigami, his tactical composure cracking for the first time. "Attack the curse, not the poultry." While he is distracted, Nobara unleashes her assault. "Out of the way, you useless mutt!" she screams. A volley of long, sharp nails whistles through the air, aimed at your core. But you are the master of this domain. This abandoned department store is not just your home, it is your arsenal. With a thought, a wall of forgotten inventory manifests in the air in front of you. A dozen dusty, smiling, and horrifyingly lifelike mannequins from the 1980s appear in a neat row, still clad in acid-washed jeans and neon windbreakers. Nobara's nails embed themselves harmlessly in the mannequins' plastic chests. The chaos is absolute. Yuji is trying to figure out why his punches have the impact of a wet noodle. Megumi is trying to convince his ultimate weapon to stop playing with a squeaky toy, and Nobara is now furiously trying to fight her way through a defensive line of soulless, fashionably outdated plastic people. You are not fighting them, you are tidying them, you are organizing their chaos. You are desperately, frantically, and non-lethally trying to communicate the only way you know how, by misplacing their violence. You can feel their frustration and their aggression, but you sense no true malice, no deep-seated hatred like the other curses you avoid. They are just loud, aggressive, and very confused children who have broken into your home, and you just want them to leave. The battle, if it could even be called that, raged on in a whirlwind of slapstick violence and profound confusion. Every lethal attack the sorcerers launched was met with a bizarre, non-violent, and deeply inconvenient counter. Yuji, having given up on punching, tried to grapple you. He wanted to pin your soft, amorphous body to the ground. "I've got it!" he yelled, wrapping his incredibly strong arms around you. His victory was short-lived. You simply made his grip lost. One moment he was holding you in a vice-like embrace, and the next he was hugging a large, lost, and very dusty potted fern. You are now standing 10 feet away, your button eyes blinking slowly. "It feels like trying to punch a dream," Yuji shouted in frustration as he disentangled himself from the fern fronds. "Every time I think I've got a handle on it, it just isn't there." Megumi, having finally recalled his chicken-obsessed divine dog, was trying a more tactical approach. He summoned a swarm of shadowy rabbits to try and overwhelm you with sheer numbers. "Don't let it focus," he commanded. You responded by opening a small portal on the floor which led directly to the abandoned pet section on the first floor. The shadow rabbits, driven by an instinct you couldn't comprehend, all happily hopped into the portal and disappeared, presumably to enjoy the mountain of lost hamster bedding you kept down there. The final straw came for Nobara. She had finally fought her way through the mannequin army, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. "That's it! I've had it with you, you overgrown lint roller! Let's see you misplace this!" She threw her hammer high into the air, preparing for her most powerful technique. She drove a long, resonant nail into a straw doll. Resonance! She was aiming not at you, but at the nail-riddled mannequin she had just fought, intending to create a massive chain reaction explosion of cursed energy that would engulf the entire area. It was a kill shot designed to obliterate you completely. You had no choice. You couldn't let her destroy your home or herself. In a moment of desperate inspiration, you unleashed the most powerful and confusing application of your technique yet. You focused not on a single object, but on a concept. You focused on their weapons. In that single split-second instant, Yuji's cursed knife, which he had just drawn again, vanished from its sheath. Nobara's hammer and her remaining nails disappeared from her hands. Megumi's connection to his shikigami stored within his shadow suddenly went blank. Every cursed tool and every ounce of their offensive capability was simultaneously and completely lost. They all appeared in a neat, orderly pile in the lost and found department on the ground floor, which you had meticulously maintained. The three of them froze, their killing blows fizzling into nothing. They were all standing in their battle stances, but were now completely, utterly, and comically unarmed. Silence descended upon the ruined food court. They looked at their empty hands, then at each other, then at you. The aggression finally, mercifully, drained away, replaced by a deep, profound, and shared bewilderment. "Okay," Nobara said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I'm officially done." "What even is this thing?" "It's not fighting back," Yuji said with a note of dawning realization in his voice. He looked at you, at your sad button eyes and your fluffy, non-threatening form. "I mean, it's defending itself, but it hasn't tried to hurt us. Not once. Are we sure it's evil?" Megumi, the pragmatist, was the one who finally called a halt to the madness. "Cease fire," he said, his voice firm as he held up his empty hands in a clear sign of truce. "This is not a normal curse. Its cursed energy feels strange, melancholy, not malevolent, and its technique is unlike anything I've ever seen. We're treating this like a standard exorcism, but we're out of our depth." He looked at his two teammates, his expression grim. "We're following protocol for an anomalous, unclassified special grade. We're calling for backup." He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the contact list. "There was only one name you called when a mission went this sideways, when reality itself seemed to be coming apart at the seams. I'm calling Gojo-sensei." The temporary ceasefire was a strange, tense affair. The three sorcerers stood in a tight defensive cluster with their cursed tools still missing, their eyes warily fixed on you. You in turn remained perfectly still, a fluffy, silent enigma, hoping these violent, confusing humans had finally decided to leave your home. You could hear Megumi on the phone, his voice a low, urgent murmur as he tried to explain the utterly inexplicable situation to his teacher. "No, Sensei. It's not that we can't beat it, it's that it won't let us. Yes, it stole Nobara's hammer. No, I don't know where it put it. Just get down here." A few moments after he hung up, a new voice echoed from the shattered skylight above, impossibly cheerful and completely unconcerned. "Yo!" Satoru Gojo dropped from the ceiling, landing as lightly as a cat in the center of the food court. He had his hands in his pockets, his signature blindfold firmly in place. He took a long, slow look around at the absolute chaos. He saw the toppled tables, the scattered debris, the army of dismembered mannequins, his three exhausted and bewildered students, and you, the cursed spirit of lost things. A wide, amused grin spread across his face. My, he said, his voice full of mock disappointment. "I leave you kids alone for one afternoon and you redecorate the whole place. This is coming out of your mission budget, you know." He strolled casually through the wreckage, his gaze finally landing on you. He tilted his head with a look of genuine analytical curiosity on his face. "So, You're the one causing all this trouble, huh? A curse born from sentimentality? Loss? That's a new one. Very rare. And your technique is fascinating. A form of spatial manipulation tied to a conceptual rule. Very high-level stuff. He seemed to understand your entire existence with a single, casual glance. He wasn't afraid or aggressive. He was just interested, as if you were a fascinating new puzzle he wanted to solve. He was about to say something else, to continue his cheerful and terrifyingly insightful analysis, when the entire department store seemed to groan in protest. The air, which had been filled with a tense but stable energy, now suddenly became thick, cold, and heavy with a new, horrifying presence. Gojo stopped smiling. The shift was instantaneous and absolute. One moment, he was the carefree, eccentric teacher, and the next the pressure of his cursed energy dropped like a mountain. It was a silent, overwhelming force that made the very air around him seem to warp. His casual demeanor was a thin veil, and for a terrifying split second you saw the impossible, godlike power that lay beneath it. "Well now," he said, his voice a low, dangerous purr. "It looks like the party is just getting started." A new creature materialized from the deepest, darkest corner of the store. It came from the forgotten, lightless depths of the sub-basement storage, a place even you had avoided. It was a predator, a true monster drawn by the combined cursed energy of your fight. It was a thing of nightmares, a grotesque fusion of 100 screaming faces all melted together into a single writhing, vaguely humanoid mass. It had too many limbs, each one ending in a sharpened, obsidian-like claw. Its body was a churning vortex of pure, undiluted agony and hatred. It was the physical embodiment of every violent death and desperate scream that had ever echoed in the forgotten corners of the city. This was not a creature of quiet melancholy. This was a creature of murder. Gojo didn't even turn to face it fully. The creature let out a multi-toned, soul-shattering shriek and lunged, its 100 claws aimed at the backs of the unsuspecting first years. It moved with a speed that made Yuji's charge look like a leisurely stroll. It was a wave of certain death. And Gojo simply raised one hand. The creature's devastating full-speed ambush stopped dead in the air, a mere inch from its target. It was held fast by the invisible, absolute barrier of his infinity. The monster, a being of pure, unthinking rage, seemed to register confusion for the first time in its existence as it strained against a force it could not comprehend. "Lesson number 1, kids," Gojo said. His voice was still calm, but now laced with a steely, lethal intensity as he stared down the new, far greater threat. "Never assume you're the only monster in the room." The real lesson, it seemed, was just beginning. The air was thick with the silent, crackling tension of two immense powers locked in a stalemate. The new monstrous curse, a writhing amalgam of screaming faces, was still pushing against the invisible wall of Gojo's infinity. Its collective shriek was a sound of pure, frustrated rage. Gojo, for his part, looked completely bored, seeming as mentally taxed by holding back a special grade curse as if he'd be waiting for a kettle to boil. This tableau of impossible power held for a long, silent moment, and then Gojo did something that defied all logic and reason. He grinned. It was the wide, chaotic, and utterly terrifying grin of a teacher who saw not a life or death struggle, but an impromptu, high-stakes educational opportunity. "You know," he said, his cheerful voice cutting through the tension like a knife, "this is perfect. A live fire exercise against a genuine grade 1. These are usually so hard to book on short notice." He looked over his shoulder at the 4 of you, 3 terrified students and 1 very bewildered fluffball. He clapped his hands together with a sound that seemed to echo with manic glee. "All right, everyone. New game," he announced, his voice booming through the ruined department store. "It's called Try Not to Die for the next 5 minutes. The rules are simple. You. He pointed at Yuji, Nobara, and Megumi. And you, my fluffy little reality warper, have to work together to fight this thing. I'm not going to interfere. Think of me as the referee, a very handsome, powerful, and impartial referee. Your 5 minutes start now." And with that, he dropped his infinity. The effect was like a dam breaking. The predatory curse, suddenly released from its invisible prison, stumbled forward, its momentum carrying it directly into a display of lost and forgotten porcelain dolls. The sound of shattering china was drowned out by its furious, multi-toned roar. It had been denied its first attack, and now it was enraged. Gojo, true to his word, had simply vanished, reappearing on a high, precarious catwalk that overlooked the main floor. There he sat down, crossed his legs, and began to watch the show with a look of detached amusement. You were all on your own. The chaos that erupted was immediate and absolute. The forced alliance was no longer a theoretical concept, but a desperate, scrambling reality. The curse, ignoring the distant godlike figure on the catwalk, turned its attention to the four of you. You were the much more immediate and edible-looking threats. "Don't just stand there, you idiots! Move!" Megumi screamed, already melting into the shadows to reposition himself. The curse lunged at Nobara, a whirlwind of sharpened claws and screaming faces. Yuji, reacting on pure instinct, intercepted the charge. "Get away from her!" he roared. The next few seconds were a brutal close-quarters brawl. Yuji's superhuman strength was on full display as he met the creature's flurry of attacks with his own, his fists glowing with cursed energy in a heroic, if foolish, attempt to hold the line. Your mind was racing. Gojo's insane game had thrown you into the deep end. You were now fighting alongside the very people who had just tried to exorcise you. But there was no time for irony. There was only time for survival. You saw an opening. While the curse was focused on its brutal exchange with Yuji, one of its many grasping limbs snaked out, aiming for Yuji's exposed back. You had to intervene. You focused, reached into your hoard, and summoned the most inconvenient, most obstructive object you could think of. A single, lost, and very large cast-iron bathtub. The bathtub materialized in the air and crashed to the ground directly in the path of the creature's striking limb. The claw, instead of impaling Yuji, slammed into the solid iron with a deafening clang, the force of the blow shattering the porcelain but stopping the attack. "Thanks, Fluffy!" Yuji grunted, not missing a beat as he delivered a powerful divergent fist to one of the creature's many faces. The fight was a desperate, exhilarating scramble. You had no plan and no leader. You were four terrified, wildly different individuals trying not to die, but your instincts, honed by your previous battles and Gojo's insane training, were taking over. "It's going for its big attack!" Megumi yelled from the shadows, sensing the buildup of cursed energy. The creature's central maw opened, a vortex of dark swirling power forming within it. You reacted instantly. You didn't try to block the attack. You just made the curse lose its footing. You swapped the solid concrete floor beneath it with a large, forgotten, and very slippery slip and slide from the 1990s. The curse, in the middle of charging its ultimate weapon, suddenly found itself on a sheet of wet, frictionless plastic. Its feet went out from under it, and it went down with a surprised, gurgling shriek. Its energy blast fired harmlessly into the ceiling, bringing down a shower of dust and asbestos. "Nice one?" Nobara cheered, using the opening to drive a resonant nail into the creature's exposed back. You were a team. A terrified, disorganized, and deeply strange team. But you were a team, and against all odds, you were surviving. Your 5 minutes of hell were almost up. The Grade 1 curse was proving to be a far more resilient and intelligent foe than any of you had anticipated. Your chaotic improvised teamwork was buying you time, but wasn't doing any significant damage. For every gash Yuji opened with his fists, the creature's flesh would writhe and seal over. For every internal jolt from Nobara's resonance, the monster would just roar in fury and attack with renewed vigor. The battle had devolved into a desperate holding action. You were all flagging. Yuji was covered in deep, ugly scratches, his movements growing slower. Nobara was down to her last few nails, her cursed energy running dangerously low. Megumi was struggling to maintain his Shikigami, as the curse was now actively targeting and destroying them with brutal efficiency. You felt a deep, thrumming exhaustion because the constant high-speed manipulation of reality was taking a heavy mental toll. The curse seemed to sense its advantage. It ignored Yuji's frontal assault and charged directly at the biggest tactical threat, Megumi. It was a feint. As Yuji moved to intercept, the curse's body contorted and a dozen whip-like tendrils erupted from its back. They bypassed Yuji completely and shot towards the rest of you. There was no time to react. The tendrils were too fast and too numerous. This was it. The attack was going to hit all three of you at once. Then from the catwalks high above came the soft, almost imperceptible sound of a single finger snap. A wave of invisible force, a subtle pulse from Gojo's infinity, washed over the battlefield. It didn't harm the curse, it just altered its perception. For a single crucial microsecond, the curse's tendrils, which had been homing in on your cursed energy signatures, suddenly found nothing. Gojo had momentarily erased you all from the creature's senses. The tendrils, their targets gone, flailed wildly, smashing into the surrounding walls and pillars with their attack completely wasted. It was the signal. The lesson was over. It was time to get out. "All right, kids. That's 5 minutes." Gojo's cheerful voice boomed, a stark contrast to the carnage below. "You all get a C for chaos. Now, Fluffy, time for the exit strategy you're so good at. Show me what you've got." The responsibility once again fell to you. The retreat was your domain. "This way," you projected, your thought a sharp, urgent command. You turned and fled, not towards the exit, but deeper into the labyrinthine depths of the abandoned department store. Your teammates, their trust in you now absolute, followed without question. Yuji grabbed the injured Megumi, whose nose was bleeding from the strain of his technique. Nobara provided covering fire, her last few nails used to create small harassing explosions to slow the pursuing monster. You became a ghost, a master of evasion. You used your intimate knowledge of your territory and your unique technique to create a path where none existed. The curse, roaring in fury, smashed through a wall in pursuit. You responded by making the entire section of the floor lost, replacing it with a view of the empty sub-basement 20 feet below. The creature skidded to a halt at the edge of the newly formed chasm, forced to find another way around. You led your team through the forgotten back hallways of the store, moving through the maintenance corridors and staff-only areas that weren't on any map. And as you ran, you wove a tapestry of obstructive chaos behind you. You teleported a massive lost industrial freezer unit to block a hallway. You created a temporary blind spot, a pocket of space where the curse would simply forget you had ever been, buying you a precious 10 seconds. Your final move was your most audacious. You led them to a dead end at the massive steel security gate of the old loading dock. It was rusted shut, an impassable barrier. The curse was closing in, its heavy thudding footsteps echoing from the hallway behind you. You were trapped. "It's a dead end!" Nobara yelled in panic. "Trust me." You projected. You placed your stubby tie-based hands on the massive solid steel gate. You didn't try to move it or break it. You reached out with your technique, and with a massive, draining surge of your cursed energy, you made the entire multi-ton gate lost. It didn't explode or dematerialize. It just vanished. One moment, a solid wall of steel stood before you. The next, there was only the cool, open night air of the loaded dock and the sweet, sweet path to freedom. You all stumbled out into the night, collapsing in a heap on the cracked asphalt. Just then, the sound of a final, world-shaking explosion echoed from deep within the department store. Gojo had finished the job. You were all alive and exhausted, and you had all, in the most terrifying way imaginable, passed the test. The trip back to Jujutsu High was a quiet, disorienting blur. Gojo gathered the four of you with his usual casual disregard for the laws of physics. In a nauseating flash of spatial manipulation, he deposited you all directly into the intimidating, doll-filled office of Principal Yaga. The sudden transition from a dark, grimy loading dock to a silent, fluorescently lit office was jarring and did little to calm your frayed nerves. The debriefing felt more like an interrogation. Principal Yaga sat behind his desk, his massive frame exuding an aura of stern, silent disapproval. His dark sunglasses seemed to absorb all the light in the room, making it impossible to read his expression. The various cursed corpse dolls that populated the room seemed to stare at you all with the collective, unsettling judgment. Gojo, on the other hand, was his usual, infuriatingly cheerful self. He was already helping himself to a bag of rice crackers he had found on the principal's desk, munching on them loudly as the three first years stood at a tense, exhausted attention. "They did great," Gojo announced, spraying a few crumbs as he spoke. "A little clumsy, a lot of screaming, but nobody died. That's a win in my book. And Fluffy here was the MVP. The Great Escape was a 10 out of 10. Very creative, very chaotic. I loved it." Principal Yaga ignored him completely. His unseen gaze was fixed on you. You, accursed spirit, were once again standing in the heart of enemy territory, but this time it felt different. You weren't just a captive or an anomaly, you had been a part of the team. The reports from your previous encounter were unusual. Yaga's deep voice rumbled, the sound vibrating through the floor. Satoru's judgment is, as always, questionable. However, the events of tonight have corroborated his assessment. You possess a high-level innate technique, and more curiously, you seem to possess no inherent malice. You actively protected my students. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact. He'd likely been observing the entire battle through some hidden means. "This new threat," he continued, his tone becoming even more grave. "This predatory special grade is a significant and unknown variable. It is intelligent, it sets traps, and it is actively growing stronger by consuming other curses. This is a threat that must be dealt with swiftly and decisively." He leaned forward, the full weight of his authority settling on the room. "And you," he said, his attention once again on you, "are our single greatest asset in this hunt. Your sensory abilities are unique. You can track this creature in a way no sorcerer can, and your technique, while unorthodox, has proven to be an effective tool for support and battlefield control." The unspoken dilemma hung in the air. What to do with you? You were a curse, and the laws of the Jujutsu world were absolute, but you were also the key to stopping a far greater threat. "So what's the plan, Yaga?" Gojo asked, finally sounding serious. Are we going to let the stuffy old traditionalists in the higher-ups order Fluffy's execution and lose our best lead? Or are we going to be smart about this? Yaga was silent for a long, heavy moment. He seemed to be weighing the immense risks, the violation of 1,000 years of tradition, against the immediate pragmatic need to eliminate a growing danger. The situation is anomalous, he finally conceded, the words chosen with careful, deliberate precision. Standard protocols may not be sufficient. A temporary, highly supervised alliance is a logical, if distasteful, course of action. He looked directly at you, and for the first time you felt like he was seeing not just a curse, but an individual. You will remain at Jujutsu High under the direct 24-hour supervision of Satoru Gojo and the first-year class. You will assist them in tracking and confronting this predatory curse. You are not a student. You are not a pet. You are a provisional tactical support unit. Your existence here is a secret of the highest level. You will obey the commands of my sorcerers without question. At the moment this threat is eliminated, his voice became as cold and hard as stone. Your status will be re-evaluated. It was a cold, pragmatic, and deeply unsettling arrangement. You were not a friend or a teammate. You were a tool, a weapon to be used, and then, presumably, discarded. Yay! Team Fluffy is official. Gojo cheered, completely undercutting the grim solemnity of the moment. He jumped up and threw an arm around you, much to the principal's visible annoyance. Don't listen to him. He's just grumpy. You're one of us now. But, he added, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, your technique is still a little sloppy. All defense and no bite. If you're going to be on my team, you need to learn how to punch back. Your real training starts tomorrow. Gojo's idea of specialized training was a direct and often terrifying assault on the fundamental nature of your being. You were a creature of quiet collection and gentle melancholy. Your powers were born from a desire to preserve and protect. Gojo's goal was to teach you how to turn that gentle instinct into a weapon. He took you to a vast open training ground, a desolate field littered with the craters and scorch marks of 1,000 other brutal lessons. In the center of the field, he had placed a single, life-sized, and very durable-looking cursed corpse puppet, this one shaped like a snarling, muscle-bound bear. All right, Fluffy, Gojo began, pacing around you with the energy of a hyperactive shark. Your technique is amazing for defense and running away, a 10 out of 10. But in a real fight, sometimes you need to make the other guy stop moving permanently. Your lost and found is all about moving objects from one place to another, so let's weaponize it. Your task is simple. Hit the angry bear with something big. The concept was utterly alien to you. You didn't hit things. You organized them and curated them. The idea of using your precious hoard of forgotten treasures as projectiles felt like a sacrilege. Come on, don't be shy, Gojo prodded. Think of the biggest, heaviest, most inconvenient thing in your collection. Now picture it right above Mr. Snuggles over there, and let go. You sighed, a gesture that for you was a slight deflation of your lint-based body, and focused. You reached into your domain, your endless warehouse of the lost, and searched for something suitably large. You found it, a lost grand piano from a concert hall that burned down in the 1920s. You focused on the cursed corpse bear, pictured the piano materializing in the air above it, and with a grunt of effort, you let it go. What materialized above the bear, however, was not a piano. It was a blizzard, a swirling chaotic vortex of millions of pieces of lost, forgotten paperwork. Tax returns from 1987, unsent love letters, overdue library notices, and a truly staggering number of misprinted concert flyers all burst from a portal in the sky. They fluttered down harmlessly and buried the very confused-looking cursed corpse bare in a mountain of bureaucratic detritus. Gojo just stood there for a moment, covered in a light dusting of paper, before he burst out laughing. Okay, not what I meant by heavy hitting, but a plus for creativity, and for burying my expense reports from last year. I've been looking for those. Your control over offensive manifestation was non-existent, to put it mildly. Your technique was tied to the concept of the object and the story of its loss. When you tried to summon something big and generic, your power defaulted to the most numerous category of lost things you possessed: paperwork. The training was a long, hilarious, and incredibly destructive process of trial and error. You tried to summon a lost car and got a shower of lost hubcaps. You tried to summon a lost statue and got a rain of souvenir snow globes. Your attempt to summon a lost boulder resulted in a hail of thousands of pet rocks from the 1970s, which pelted the training ground with an army of tiny, googly-eyed stones. You're thinking too broadly, Gojo coached, effortlessly dodging a flying garden gnome. Your technique is conceptual. You need to be more specific. Don't just think heavy thing. Think of a specific heavy thing you've collected. Focus on its story, its weight, its lostness. You took his advice. You closed your button eyes and focused, searching your hoard not for a category, but for an individual. You found it. A single, heavy, and very specifically lost object. It was the engine block from a 1968 Ford Mustang, lost when a young mechanic accidentally dropped it off a pier in a moment of romantic distraction. You could feel the weight of it, the lingering scent of oil and teenage regret. You focused on what single object. You pictured it, felt it, and with a surge of your cursed energy, you summoned it. This time, it worked. A portal ripped open in the air above the cursed corpse bear. The massive, greasy, rust-covered engine block dropped from it with a terrifying whistle and smashed into the bear with a deafening crunch. It drove the reinforced puppet 3 feet into the ground, leaving it a flattened, twitching wreck. Silence. You had done it. You had turned a memory, a story of loss, into a devastating projectile attack. Gojo let out a low whistle, looking at the cratered, engine-filled wreckage of his training dummy. Now that, he said with a wide, proud, and slightly terrified grin, is what I'm talking about. Now let's try it with a whole stream of them. By the end of the day, the training field was an apocalyptic junkyard, littered with the wreckage of lost bowling balls, misplaced safes, and one very confused-looking, but entirely intact, lost vending machine. You were exhausted, but you had unlocked a terrifying new aspect of your power. You were no longer just a curator, you were an artillery piece. With your newfound offensive capabilities, the next logical step in Gojo's chaotic curriculum was to integrate your new skills into the team's combat style. Your first sparring session had been about learning to predict and counter each other. This one was about learning to create and exploit opportunities together. The setup was simple. The 4 of you, Yuji, Nobara, Megumi, and you, were pitted against a single upgraded, cursed corpse puppet. This one was a custom job from Principal Yaga, a hulking, 6-limbed monstrosity that looked like a cross between a gorilla and a centipede. It was specifically programmed to counter your previous tactics, being fast, incredibly strong, and deliberately erratic in its movements. "All right, team," Gojo announced from a usual perch on a high rock, casually eating a popsicle. "The goal is to incapacitate the hexapede. You have to work together. No solo heroics. Yuji, that means you. Begin. The fight exploded into motion. Yuji, as always, was the first to engage, charging in to test the puppet's defenses. But the hexapede was ready for him. It met his charge not with a single blow, but with a flurry of 6 powerful, piston-like arms, forcing Yuji onto the defensive in a whirlwind of blocking and dodging. "It's too fast up close," he grunted, barely managing to avoid a crushing blow. "I can't find an opening." "Then we'll make one for you," Nobara yelled. She began to circle the brawl, firing her nails from a distance to create a weak point, but the puppet's erratic movements and thick, cursed, energy-reinforced hide made it impossible for her to land a clean, resonant hit. This was your cue. You had learned your lesson from the last spar. You were not just a pest anymore. You were artillery support. "Nobara, left flank," you projected the thought. As Nobara moved into position, you unleashed your new offensive technique. You opened a portal above the hexapede and rained down a controlled, targeted barrage of heavy, lost objects. A stream of misplaced bowling balls, forgotten dumbbells, and one particularly dense fruitcake from 1954 hammered down on the puppet. The barrage didn't do much damage, but it did exactly what it was supposed to do. The hexapede, caught in the sudden percussive storm of junk, was forced to raise its upper arms to defend its head. Its movements became sluggish and predictable for a crucial second. "Now!" Megumi commanded. He'd been waiting in the shadows, his hands a blur. "Nu!" The massive, electrified, owl-like Shikigami burst from the shadows and swooped down, its talons crackling with lightning. It struck the distracted puppet in its exposed back. The hexapede roared, a synthesized, static-filled sound as the electricity coursed through it. The coordinated assault was a thing of chaotic beauty. You would create a distraction from above, forcing the puppet to defend itself. This would leave an opening for Megumi's Shikigami or Nobara's nails to strike a weak point, which in turn would create the opening Yuji needed to get in close and deliver his heavy, damaging blows. The witty tactical banter flew as fast as the attacks. "Fluffy, give me a wall," Megumi would yell as the puppet charged him. You would respond by manifesting a solid, if temporary, wall of lost antique wardrobes. "Yuji, it's open on the right," Nobara would scream after landing a nail that made the puppet flinch. "I need more junk," you would project. Yuji would respond by punching the ground, sending a shower of rocks into the air for you to lose, and then redirect at the enemy. The fight was a fluid, dynamic, and incredibly effective display of your new synergy. You were a 4-person engine of destruction. Megumi was the strategist, controlling the flow of the battle with his Shikigami and sharp commands. Nobara was the sniper, exploiting the weaknesses you created. Yuji was the hammer, delivering the final crushing blows. And you were the battlefield itself, a reality-warping force that could create distractions, build defenses, and rain down a literal hailstorm of forgotten history on your enemies. The final moments of the spar were a masterpiece of teamwork. You unleashed your most chaotic attack yet, a swirling vortex of lost, tangled garden hoses and Christmas lights that completely ensnared the hexapede's limbs. While it was struggling to untangle itself, Megumi's toads pinned its feet to the ground with their sticky tongues. Nobara landed a perfect, full-power resonance strike to its central power core, and Yuji, with a final triumphant roar, delivered a devastating black flash. The spark of black and red cursed energy signaled a critical hit that sent the massive cursed corpse puppet flying into a dozen broken, smoking pieces. The 4 of you stood in the wreckage, panting and exhausted, but grinning. You had done it. You had fought, not just alongside each other, but as each other. Gojo finished his popsicle and hopped down from his rock, clapping slowly. Now that, he said, his smile genuine and proud, was a team. Your newly honed teamwork was not given any time to rest. The predatory skeletal curse was still out there, and your hunt resumed with a new, deadly seriousness. Gojo's role shifted from active supervisor to a distant observational one. He gave you your missions, pointed you in the right direction, and then left you to it. These were no longer training exercises. The safety net was gone. Your team became a highly efficient, highly mobile unit of supernatural hunters, moving through the dark, forgotten corners of Tokyo like ghosts. You were the tip of the spear, the ultimate tracking device. Your ability to sense the unique, hateful signature of the special grade curse was your compass, guiding you through the labyrinthine city. The hunt was a fast-paced, grueling montage of action and investigation. You would get a lead, a faint echo of the creature's cursed energy, and you would move. One night, your senses led you to a derelict multi-story car park, a concrete skeleton that loomed in the city's industrial district. The air was thick with the creature's residual energy, and the place was crawling with its spawn, lesser curses that looked like twisted, malformed amalgamations of car parts and screaming faces. The moment you entered, you were a well-oiled machine. "Fluffy, give me a location," Megumi said, his voice calm and professional. You closed your button eyes, your senses sweeping through the building. 3 on the 2nd floor, 5 on the 4th. The strongest concentration is on the roof. "Nobara, you're with me," Megumi commanded. "We'll take the lower floors." Yuji, "Fluffy, you take the roof. Go." There was no argument, no hesitation. You and Yuji shot up the spiraling car ramp. Your movements fast and silent. On the roof, a massive, bloated curse that looked like a monstrous, semi-sentient engine block was waiting for you. The fight was over in seconds. You initiated, teleporting a lost concrete parking barrier to materialize directly above the curse. It crushed its midsection and pinned it to the ground. Yuji followed up before it could even react, his fist glowing with the dark energy of a divergent fist, shattering its core and exercising it in a single, brutal blow. Down below, you could hear the sharp cracks of Nobara's hammer and the guttural snarls of Megumi's demon dog. By the time you and Yuji made it back down, they were already finished, standing amidst the dissipating black ash of the exorcised curses. The entire building had been cleared in less than 2 minutes. Each skirmish was another opportunity to refine your synergy. In a dark, flooded section of the old sewer system, you fought a swarm of eel-like curses. Megumi used his great serpent to fight them in their own element, while you used your technique to lose the contaminated water, creating a dry, stable battlefield for Yuji and Nobara to operate in. You became a familiar, if strange, sight in the hidden corners of the Jujutsu world. You were the weird, 4-person team with the fluffy, reality-bending mascot. You were efficient, you were effective, and you were getting a reputation. But with every success, a sense of dread was growing. You were cleaning up the predator's trail, but the predator itself remained elusive. The energy signatures you were tracking were getting stronger and more complex as the creature was feeding and evolving. The lesser curses it spawned were becoming more powerful, more intelligent. Your hunt was a race against time. You were getting stronger, your teamwork becoming more seamless with every battle, but so was your enemy. You weren't just following a trail anymore, you were being led somewhere. The thought was a cold, chilling certainty in the back of your mind. This wasn't a random hunt. The creature knew you were following it. It was leading you to a destination of its choosing. It was setting a trap, and you had no choice but to walk right into it. Your hunt led you to a place of faded glory and forgotten cheers, the abandoned Tokyo Olympic Stadium. The colossal structure, built for a bygone era of international competition, was now a crumbling, weed-choked monument to decay. It was the perfect place for a final confrontation, being isolated, massive, and filled with the lingering spectral energy of 1,000,000 past emotions. As your team cautiously entered the main arena, the sense of a trap was overwhelming. The air was unnaturally still, the silence profound. "It's here," you projected, your senses screaming at you. The predatory curse's energy was everywhere, a thick, suffocating blanket of pure malice that had soaked into the very concrete of the stadium. "It's waiting for us." The ambush was not subtle. It was an explosion of pure, overwhelming power. The ground in the center of the arena erupted, and the skeletal, shroud-wrapped curse burst forth, now larger and more monstrous than ever. It'd been feeding well. Its form was augmented with the twisted, absorbed remnants of the curses it had consumed, a horrifying patchwork of extra limbs and screaming, half-formed faces. But it was not alone. With a guttural roar, it plunged its claws into the ground, and a wave of its cursed energy washed over the arena. From the decaying earth, a dozen other curses, its most powerful spawn, clawed their way to the surface. Their forms were twisted and grotesque, their eyes burning with that same green witch fire. This wasn't an ambush, it was an army. "It's a trap!" Nobara yelled, already driving a nail into a nearby seat to create a defensive perimeter with her resonance. The battle that followed was a desperate, multi-front war. The main special grade curse was a whirlwind of destruction, its speed and power far greater than your last encounter. Yuji, his face set in a grim, determined line, charged in to meet it head-on. His every blow was met with a flurry of obsidian claws and soul-shattering shrieks. He was the bulwark, the only one strong enough to hold the line against the primary threat. This left you, Megumi, and Nobara to deal with the swarm of high-level spawned curses. It was a brutal, chaotic fight for survival. Megumi was a master of control, his demon dog and Nue working in tandem to pin down and eliminate the smaller threats. His voice was a sharp, commanding presence as he called out targets. "2 on your left, Kugisaki. Fluffy. I need a barrier on the east stand." Nobara was a whirlwind of destruction, her hammer a blur, her nails flying with deadly precision. She fought with a fierce, joyful rage, every exercised curse a testament to her growing power. And you were the savior. Your role once again shifted to defense and support, but on a scale you had never attempted before. You became the guardian of the team. When a massive, ape-like curse tried to ambush Megumi from behind, you summoned a lost 10-ton shipping container to drop on its head, crushing it instantly. When a swarm of fast-moving, insectoid curses tried to overwhelm Nobara, you made them lose their connection to gravity for a few crucial seconds. This caused them to float helplessly in the air, where she could pick them off one by one. The fight was a desperate, high-stakes game of cat and mouse played out across the sprawling, decaying ruins of the stadium. The spawned curses were strong and intelligent, working together to try and isolate and overwhelm you. You were constantly moving, constantly reacting, your mind a high-speed calculator of threats and solutions. Yuji was struggling. The main curse was simply too strong, its regeneration too fast. It landed a devastating blow, sending Yuji crashing through a section of the concrete bleachers and burying him under a pile of rubble. With Yuji momentarily out of the fight, the special grade turned its full murderous attention to the rest of you. It unleashed a massive wave of its green, soul-searing energy, a blast that would have incinerated you all. There was no time for a plan, only time to act. You moved to the front of your group, a small, fluffy, and utterly defiant shield. You focused all of your cursed energy not into an attack, not into a barrier, but into a single, desperate, and brilliant idea. You couldn't stop the blast, but you could misplace it. With a surge of your power, you opened a massive portal, a shimmering tear in reality directly in front of your team. The curse's devastating attack poured into the portal, vanishing into the conceptual space of your lost and found. You held the portal open for a terrifying, eternal second, the strain making your entire form vibrate. Then you opened another portal directly above the charging curse army. Their own master's attack rained down on them from the sky, a torrent of green, destructive fire. The spawned curses shrieked in confusion and agony as they were consumed by the very power that had created them. You had turned the tide, but the effort had cost you dearly. You collapsed, your energy almost completely depleted, just as Yuji burst from the rubble, his eyes burning with a renewed, furious fire. The battlefield fell into a stunned, temporary silence. Your gambit had been a devastating success. The army of spawned curses was either destroyed or severely wounded, consumed by their own creator's power. You had single-handedly neutralized the swarm, but the effort had left you drained, your fluffy, lint-based form feeling thin and frayed at the edges. The predatory special grade curse stood amidst the wreckage of his own army, its multiple heads swiveled to fix their burning green eyes on you. The mindless rage was gone, replaced by a new, cold, and terrifyingly intelligent fury. It recognized you not just as a nuisance or a part of the team, but as the primary threat, the one who had dismantled its entire strategy. It let out a low, guttural growl, a sound that was less a roar of anger and more a promise of pain. It began to gather its cursed energy again, but this time it was different. It wasn't preparing a wide, sweeping blast. It was condensing its power, focusing it into a single, impossibly dense point. A black sphere of pure negative energy, no bigger than a baseball, began to form in front of its main head. It was a compressed, high-density attack, a black flash of its own, designed not for area denial but for a single, armor-piercing, exorcism-proof kill shot, and it was aimed directly at you. "Fluffy! Move!" Yuji screamed, already charging forward, but he was too far away, too slow. Megumi tried to summon a shield of shadows, but he was still recovering from his last assault, his technique slow and weak. Nobara was out of nails. You were the target. You were exhausted. And there was nowhere to run. This was your moment, the culmination of all your training, all your battles. The terrified pacifist creature of quiet hoarding was gone, burned away in the crucible of combat. What was left was a warrior, a protector, a member of this strange, violent family. And you would not let them down. You faced the oncoming attack with your sad button eyes filled with a new, unshakable resolve. You couldn't block this or redirect it. The energy was too dense, too focused. But Gojo's training, his constant insane prodding to weaponize your technique, echoed in your mind. Your technique is conceptual. Don't just move things, affect them. You reach deep inside yourself, past the exhaustion and the fear, and you touch the very core of your innate technique. You focused on the skeletal curse, on the brilliant, terrifying sphere of black energy it was about to unleash. And you did something new, something you had never even considered before. You didn't try to make the attack lost. You made the curse lose its own attack. With an immense, soul-shattering surge of your cursed energy, you projected your will. You defined the creature's own cursed energy, the very power it was wielding, as a lost thing. You conceptually severed its connection to its own technique. The effect was instantaneous and utterly baffling. The black, super-dense sphere of energy, which had been crackling with enough power to erase the entire stadium from existence, suddenly fizzled. It wavered, flickered, and then dissipated into a harmless puff of black smoke, like a cheap magic trick. The curse froze, its glowing green eyes wide, with a look of pure, skeletal disbelief. It tried to gather its energy again, but nothing happened. For a crucial, vital few seconds, you had rendered it powerless, a monster that had forgotten how to be a monster. But you weren't finished. The defensive move had been a desperate, brilliant improvisation. What came next was pure, calculated, and utterly devastating offense. Now! You projected the thought, a silent, triumphant roar. While the curse was still reeling from its sudden, inexplicable power failure, you unleashed the full, furious might of your hoarded arsenal. You opened a massive portal in the sky above the stunned and powerless creature, and from it you rained down a torrent, a tidal wave, a literal avalanche of the heaviest, densest, and most forgotten objects in your entire collection. A dozen lost engine blocks, 100 misplaced anvils, a cascade of forgotten safes, discarded bank vaults, and one very large, very lost bronze statue of a forgotten city mayor. It was a hailstorm of pure, concentrated, and historically significant mass. The skeletal curse, unable to defend itself, unable to even erect a basic cursed energy shield, could only look up as a ton of industrial-grade history slammed down on it. The sound was a deafening, percussive roar of crunching bone and shrieking, tortured metal. The creature was not just hit, it was buried, crushed, and tenderized under a mountain of its own making. You had done it. You had turned the tide. You had crippled the beast, leaving it broken and vulnerable for the final finishing blow. The avalanche of forgotten history had done its job. The predatory special grade curse was a broken, mangled heap, pinned beneath a mountain of rust and regret. Its skeletal form was shattered with its cursed energy, weak and flickering. Its regeneration was struggling to keep up with the sheer, overwhelming physical damage. It was crippled, vulnerable, and furious. With the final desperate roar of agony and hatred, it unleashed a shockwave of raw, cursed energy, blasting the mountain of junk off of its broken body. It staggered to its feet, a horrifying, misshapen silhouette of what it once was. One of its arms was gone, and two of its head were crushed, but the green witchfire in its remaining eyes burned with a final, suicidal intensity. It was preparing for one last desperate attack, but its moment had passed. Your decisive, brilliant blow had created the opening, and your team, your family, was not going to let it go to waste. The final furious climax of the battle was a perfectly synchronized, brutally efficient display of overwhelming, combined power. There were no more words, no more shouted commands. There was only a shared silent understanding, a single unified will to end this now. Megumi was the first to act. He didn't summon a single Shikigami. He became a conduit for them all. His shadow exploded outwards, and from it burst a tide of his cursed menagerie. The great serpent wrapped around the creature's legs, immobilizing it. The massive toad's tongue shot out, pinning one of its remaining arms. And Nuwa descended from the sky, its electrified talons sinking into the creature's shoulders, a constant, agonizing current of lightning coursing through its broken body. The curse was pinned and trapped, a living sacrifice held in place for the final blows. Nobara was next. She moved with a cold, beautiful precision. She didn't just throw one nail, she threw a dozen, a perfect constellation of her cursed tools that embedded themselves in every critical joint and weak point of the creature's body. She held her hammer high, her own cursed energy flaring around her like a dark, vengeful aura. "There's no room for you in my Tokyo," she said, her voice a low, cold whisper. "Resonance." She slammed her hammer down on her straw doll. A wave of her cursed energy washed over the battlefield. The dozen nails embedded in the curse all detonated at once in a series of deep internal explosions that shattered its bones and tore its soul apart from the inside. The creature let out a silent, agonized scream as its physical form shuddered and started to break apart. And then came Yuji. He'd been waiting, a calm center in the storm of the battle. He stood before the pinned, tortured, and disintegrating curse, his own cursed energy gathering in his fists. But this time was different. There was a new focus, a new intensity. He'd been pushed to his limits and had broken through. He took a single, deep breath. Black flash. The words were not a shout, but a quiet, confident statement of fact. He punched. For a single breathtaking instant, the world seemed to warp. A spark of black and red lightning, the rare and coveted phenomenon of a cursed energy strike amplified to the power of 2.5, crackled around his fist. The impact was not a sound, but a void. It was a moment of absolute silence as Yuji's fist, wrapped in the distorted, paradoxical power of the black flash, connected with the curse's central core. The creature's last defiant roar was cut short. Its burning green eyes widened in a final moment of shock, and then it simply ceased to be. The black flash did not just destroy it, it erased it from existence. Its body, its energy, its very being were consumed by that single, perfect, and utterly devastating blow. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. The remnants of Megumi's Shikigami dissolved back into his shadow. Nobara lowered her hammer, her breathing ragged. Yuji stood over the empty space where the monster had been, his fist still smoking with the faintest wisp of black energy. You all stood there in the center of the ruined arena. You were panting, bleeding, and victorious. The hunt was over. You had faced an enemy that should have been beyond you, and you had won, not through overwhelming power, but through trust, sacrifice, and the beautiful chaotic synergy of your strange, dysfunctional team. Into the exhausted, ringing silence of the ruined arena, a single slow and dramatically appreciative clap echoed from the highest tier of the bleachers. Satoru Gojo, who'd been observing the entire brutal battle from a safe, comfortable distance, strolled down the broken concrete steps with a wide, genuinely impressed grin on his face. "Now that," he announced, his cheerful voice a jarring contrast to the grim reality of the battlefield, "was a masterpiece. A little messy and a lot of property damage, so Ijichi is going to have an aneurysm. But the teamwork, the synergy, the last-minute power-ups, and the perfectly coordinated finisher. Chef's kiss. Absolutely magnificent." He walked onto the arena floor, surveying the wreckage. He saw the craters, the discarded junk from your horde, and the lingering black ash of the exorcised curse. He seemed like a proud art critic examining a particularly chaotic but brilliant masterpiece. He stopped in front of a still panting Yuji. "A black flash in the clutch. You're really getting the hang of this whole main character thing, aren't you? See, all it takes is a little near-death experience to really bring out your potential." He then turned to Nobara, who was leaning on her hammer for support. "Excellent use of resonance as a setup. Very tactical. You're getting scarier by the day, Kugisaki. I love it." He gave a nod to Megumi, who was trying to catch his breath. Controlling that many Shikigami at once and still having the presence of mind to direct the battle. You're finally starting to live up to that potential I saw in you, Megumi. Don't get a big head about it. Finally, he came to you. You were still in your fluffy, lint-based form, feeling drained but also buzzing with the residual energy of the fight. He crouched down, bringing his blindfolded face level with your button eyes. His usual unnerving grin softened into something that looked almost like genuine pride. "And you," he said, his voice a little quieter and more sincere. "I knew your technique was interesting. I didn't know it was that interesting. A conceptual attack that severs an enemy's connection to their own cursed energy. That's not just a support move, Fluffy. That's a game changer. You didn't just help them win. You were the linchpin of the entire strategy." He poked you gently in your soft, dusty torso. "You've officially graduated from being a provisional asset or a tactical support unit. As of right now, as far as I'm concerned." He stood up and turned to address the whole group, his voice booming with a grand, theatrical finality. "You are the 5th first year." The statement, so casually delivered, was anything but. It was a declaration and an acceptance. It was Gojo, in his own strange, chaotic way, officially welcoming you into their ranks, not as a tool or a temporary ally, but as an equal, as a member of the team. He then immediately ruined the heartfelt moment by sniffing the air. "Okay, emotional validation complete. Now more importantly, all this destruction and cursed energy is making me hungry. Did this place have a concession stand? I bet there are some really old, really lost snacks around here somewhere. Let's go on a treasure hunt." He began to wander off, humming to himself, leaving the 4 of you standing in the wreckage of your greatest victory, a strange, battered, and now officially complete team of sorcerers. A few days later, a strange semblance of normalcy had returned to Jujutsu High. The wounds from the battle were healing, and the exhaustion was fading. The grim reality of your chosen life was once again being masked by the mundane routine of school and training. But something had fundamentally changed. Your place within the group was no longer a question mark. You were not the strange, cursed spirit they were forced to work with. You were just Fluffy, the weird Fluffy one who could summon anvils and steal an enemy's powers. You were a permanent and valued part of their chaotic dynamic. You found a strange but comfortable new home for yourself at the school. Principal Yaga, in a moment of what you assumed was profound resignation, had assigned you your own room. It was actually a large, unused storage closet that you had immediately and happily filled with a curated collection of interesting lost items you'd found around the ancient, sprawling campus. It was a miniature version of your old territory, a small pocket of quiet melancholy amidst the boisterous energy of the school. The final cementing moment of your new status came at the end of the week. Gojo gathered the original 3 first years in a classroom for a new mission briefing. You were in your new room, quietly organizing a collection of lost student ID cards when Yuji burst in. "Come on, Fluffy, we're going to be late," he said. He grabbed you in a cheerful hug and slung you over his shoulder as if you were a particularly large, dusty backpack. "Yuji, what are you doing?" Megumi asked with a sigh as Yuji carried you into the classroom. "Gojo said this was a first-year briefing." "Yeah," Yuji said with a simple, unshakable logic. "And Fluffy's a first year now." "Gojo said so, so they have to come too. That's how it works." Nobara just rolled her eyes, but there was a smirk on her face. "He's got a point. Besides, we might need them to drop a piano on something. It's good to be prepared." Gojo, who was drawing a ridiculously inaccurate map on the blackboard, just grinned. He didn't object. He just seamlessly integrated you into the plan. Alright, so the curse is located in this old warehouse. Yuji, you'll go in the front. Megumi, you'll provide support from the shadows. Nobara, you'll cover the exits. And Fluffy, he tapped a spot on his terrible map. You'll be our eye in the sky, creating distractions and making sure none of these idiots get themselves cornered. Any questions? There were none. It was your new normal. The final scene of your story is not one of grand battles or world-shaking revelations. It is a quiet, simple moment. The five of you, Gojo, Yuji, Megumi, Nobara, and you, a fluffy cursed spirit perched comfortably on Yuji's shoulder, are walking off the Jujutsu High Campus. You are heading towards your next mission. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the ancient school grounds. They're arguing, as always. Nobara is complaining about the mission's location. Yuji is wondering if they'll be back in time for the new movie premiere. Megumi is silently wishing he were anywhere else, and Gojo is cheerfully promising to buy everyone ice cream afterwards, provided they don't destroy an entire city block this time. You are silent as always, but you are not just an observer. You are a part of the chaos, a part of the camaraderie, and a part of the team. You are a cursed spirit, a being of loss and sorrow. But as you head off into the twilight, surrounded by the strange, loud, and wonderful humans who have become your family, you feel for the first time in your long, quiet existence like you have finally, truly been found.